nag-release ang FDCP last year ng survey na ang preference pa rin ng Filipino na number one reason why they watch movies, artista.
Aww. Oh.
Siguro yung real winner.
That's data,
Guys, tabi muna
proven by
kayo.
data.
Kami na muna mag-uusap.
As much as academics usually say that film is dying, I would argue that it's because they haven't been to a theater. They usually watch stuff from screeners. Not everyone na.
Simple lang eh. Pag merong nag-post na nakakaiyak, alam mong merong manonood.
Medyo part siya ng, I guess, yung topic na gusto ko rin pag-usapan. Like, from a macro perspective, what are the challenges that is out of the hands of the filmmakers that you guys feel like need addressing? Siguro one example nga, like, sometimes the cinemas control which of the films are coming out kahit na this is the ideal time for this. But you don't really have that in your power to be like... So ano yung mga other examples that as hard as you work, there are some things that are out of your hands na hopefully you'd like to be solved?
For me naman, I think there are only a limited number of spaces wherein you can screen films. I think for one of the things that I noticed here, having also gone to other festivals in other places, is that locally, there's such a huge focus on production, and there are so few spaces that are actually dedicated to, like, screening films, for example, like short films, which is usually my focus, diba? Maraming spaces for that, for alternative screening spaces, ganon. Is that possible for us to create those, right? In, like, for an independent film space, diba? Parang repertory theaters in New York, in Thailand, in Vietnam are thriving because they're able to program things that are interesting for audiences, diba? They're able to screen films that were made 10, 20, 50, 100 years ago, diba? And maraming audiences that actually back those more than like the Spider-Man No Way From Homes, mga ganon. And so I'm trying to wonder if it's possible for us to start investing in more of those spaces, diba? Cinematheques in regional cinemas, for example, in regions, or even here, diba? Parang the namatay yung Cinematheque, Cinema Centenario, diba?
Namatay ba?
77.
Yeah.
Oh.
76 is still very alive, but apart from that, diba? Parang
Cinepop kasi hindi regular,
Yeah,
Hindi regular
so those
program.
kinds of things. That's what I wish for. Kasi you can't just make independent films. You have to make independent spaces for those films
Tama.
to live
Totoo
in.
talaga.
Diba?
Totoo talaga. Kahit nga yung sa MMFF yung sa stress din ako. Kasi 10 yung pelikula. And most cinemas daw sa probinsya, 4 lang.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, saan kasi singit kung 10 kayo? Kaya, saan part yung film namin dun? Parang ganun. Ang hirap din. Unless you're Vice Ganda. sorry.
Kasi Vice Ganda.
Sorry. Nagmasala.
Sa ngayon, nakadikit lang ako.
Pero parang ang hirap-hirap. Yun nga, parang kung meron sana mas maraming stage for independent films. Para din ma-open yung mata ng mga tao na, dahil magandang pelikula, ha? Hindi lang
Actually,
kami
yun.
aware.
Sobrang daming pelikula, daming magaganda. Dami rin pangit.
Yeah.
Totoo
But that's
naman.
part of the,
Pero that's how it works.
Yeah.
diba?
I mean,
sabi ko nga, I don't think anybody really goes on and making a movie na alam niyang pangit.
Oo.
At least, not the people, not the crafts people.
I mean, kung may sasadya, alam nilang B-movie at campy.
At worst, diba? Pero, I mean, it's right eh. Yung building yung grooming the audience, to use a bad word, grooming. Pero you really need to always make sure that there's an audience that sees the value of watching a movie. The dangerous thing at the moment, I think across, the whole world, is we have a generation that is not getting used to watching a movie in a cinema. I mean, my own kids will only watch diba, YouTube shorts, YouTube videos. If I tell them we're watching a movie, meron talagang groan.
I'm that kid.
Talaga, may resistance.
Kasi the fact that it's 2 hours, the fact that you're gonna make them sit there and watch, kahit pa it's a movie that they will eventually like,
Totoo
and
yan.
you know they will, diba? It's not part of, unlike, kunyari, my generation or your generation na lumaki kahit pa paano that, I'll watch a movie, this is a special night.
Event
I'm watching
talaga
something.
siya.
The kids, no, they don't see that. And that's dangerous kasi this whole generation is like that. Na they see na parang, why 2 hours? Why do I have to go somewhere to watch something when the TV is there in
Parang
front
it's a
of
chore
me?
for them.
Yeah, it's an effort.
Baka hindi na lang din sila nasanay. Kasi parang, kunyari sa atin sa movies before, di ko naman sinasabing, ako ayoko nga na may mga nudity, di ba? Ayoko na mga, pero mura is okay, di ba? Pero konting ganito lang, PG na siya, or ganito, R18 na siya, na parang, hindi sila nasama growing up. Hindi sila kasama dun sa event. So, hindi nila gets yung... Kasi ako napanood ko yung Titanic, bata pa lang ako. Yung kamay na gumagano eh. Ano po yan? Pero gets yun, di ba?
ibig sabihin,
Ano po ibig sabihin ng steam na yan? Pero ngayon, kasi dahil nga sobra yung censorship, which gets ko naman, ayun nga, nale-left out na rin sila.
Kulang lang. Yun yung feeling kong kulang na exposure. Kasi we can talk to, hanggang Gen Z kaya pa eh. Diba? Kasi
Hanggang
there's
Gen
a communal
Alpha,
experience. Pero pagdating mo sa Gen Alpha, they're really growing up without it. So how will they discover it later on? Diba? And now medyo too late. You need to make them discover it na. Pero how do you convince them that it's worth, diba, discovering?
Jason, devil's advocate lang ako. Kasi the countries that you mentioned na may mga independent spaces for cinema, those are all, I would say, developed countries, diba? But can you make the argument here na,
Okay, yeah.
diba, is it possible talaga?
Yeah. I mean, being a developed country doesn't insulate you from, let's just say, being a developed country doesn't insulate you from the forces that can kill cinema. I mean, look at Singapore right now. Ang Singapore nag-close ang one of their major cinema techs, and then nag-pull out yung one of their major na cinema franchises, parang ganun. Oh yeah, cafe cinemas, parang ganun. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, but the idea is na Thailand, for example, Vietnam, those countries na medyo similar tayo in terms of GDP, similar nga tayo ng healthcare systems to them, ganun. Meron silang mga smaller cinematheques, even in like Da Nang, which is sa central Vietnam siya, for example. And those cinematheques are alive because there are actual film-going cultures in those spaces. And mapapansin mo, kahit tingnan natin ngayon sa Pilipinas, we're such an archipelagic country, pero everyone likes watching films. I mean, I can go to, for example, you can go to Palawan and you will still be recognized, diba? And that's the kind of thing that we have. And alam natin na just because something is on streaming, just because something is already piratable, for example, it doesn't mean that people won't show up in theaters for it. And so there's actually a really hungry audience, but they don't necessarily have the space or the infrastructure to bond over things. It used to be TV. For me, when I was growing up, I would watch yung mga Roderick Paulate films on PBO. Tapos lahat kaming mga nasa barangay, we would go to the same space and watch things. Yeah, diba? And I think that community aspect is being lost na in general. Nagta-transfer siya to something like Discord, and they would watch stuff together. Alam mo
Or
yan?
Get Ready With Me.
Yes, yun. But yeah, I think it's possible for us to create those spaces, but someone has to move the needle first, because same with producing, right? No one wants to be the first investor. Everyone wants to hop in kapag meron ng tumaya ng certain amount of money. Yun, and that's why grants, like these external grants, like Peer Pictures or Hubert Balls in different countries, they're important because they're the first investor in the concept, for example. Same thing with spaces, I think.
I mean, I'll just jump in. There's a country that I'm planning to co-produce with, and we were talking, and they said that our population is 3 million, but our cinema penetration is about 90%. Sabi ko, you know that in the Philippines, our audience is only 1.6, 1.8% of our entire population. And this is from 2016 pa yata, my numbers. Pero I was saying it na parang glass half empty. But the person I talked to said, oh, but that's a good thing. You still have 90%. Your growth potential is 98%.
There's nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, so sabi niya, so the problem is not it's not your it's not the product, it's access. Maybe the 98% don't have access to the films, and maybe the solution to building your business is giving that 98% access to the films. No? And then it made me think, now that's true. Kaya I do agree with Jason, to Jason's point. We need more access points for people. And that's how the business, the industry, the showbiz industry can start recuperating kahit paano quicker and earning their money back faster, diba? And we start getting a healthy industry again, diba? Kasi we just gave up on the 98%. Nobody has really made an effort apart from, say, diba, the cinema chains like SM to build more malls. Pero nobody is really thinking about, we want to make more cinemas so that people have access. It's okay, may mall, may cinema.
Baka mahal talaga.
Oo,
Dun
pero
para dun sa...
You know, well, one, to your point lang on developed countries and the global south, I don't know if that's 98% who can actually afford them. And or when you start creating these structures, you now have DBWH, you know, trying to get money from all of this. So, you know, all of this infrastructure.
Magkaka-film festival ang DBWH.
Alam mo yan? So, medyo but ang ganda ng solution, ang ganda nung sinabi na hindi niya natatap yung 98% na market. Again, all of these solutions will not happen if we're not struggling right now. So, the struggle is a blessing. It's actually an evolution that we have to adjust to. Because the truth is, and this is a truth, hindi na natin mababalik yung dati. Lagi tayong nasa konteksto of golden age, people are sustained the whole week ang Filipino cinema. It is not happening globally and it will never happen again. Because times are changing. It's you know, it's from sound, from no sound to sound, from black and white to color, from film
Kaya
to
paliit
digital.
na talaga siya ng paliit.
Hindi
Diba
siya
from cinema to ganun, to ito na lang talaga siya.
That's true.
Magiging Polly Pocket na lang ako.
Sa Film Academy, yung mandate ko is film worker. As long as may production at may trabaho na healthy for the industry, I think it's healthy. It is harder in the end, not for producer. It might be more difficult in the end for theatrical owners.
Yes.
They will have to change the paradigm and create actual events. Yun nga, your Marvel movies na flagpole tent films na siya.
At saka kasi, remember, yun nga, you need to make movies for the big screen if you want people to watch it on the big screen.
Yes.
You know, if you cannot just make a film that can work for the small screen and the big screen and assume that people will come to the big screen. Of course, they will go to the easiest access, which is a small one. No? So, yun yung sinasabi ko about you naman, the filmmakers and the producers, being honest with themselves. Diba? The film that we're
what do you
making, hindi pupunta ang tao to pay that much money.
Parang Paul
diba?
Thomas Anderson will always make for a big screen. At imagine mo, super big hit ngayon yung film niya ngayon.
At saka kasi gagawa ka ng something that looks like it's worth people's money. Diba? If you want them to pay. So, dapat ibigay mo yon. And I think dun naman yung reverse of the challenge na parang tayo rin kailangan nating medyo aminin sa sarili natin. Tama ba yung ginagawa natin para sa kanila? Diba?
Hindi ko alam.
Pero ito naman, the reverse side of the coin, nagkakaroon ng saturation point ang streaming.
Totoo.
So parang, baka, ilang years ba? It's been what, 10, 15 years?
Totoo.
So, for all we know,
actually, there's I don't know if it's happening here, but there's a study nga, the Gen Zs are looking at cinema again. For the communal experience, for the special experience, for shutting out the rest of your world, which is actually the great, sinasabi ko nga that's the one thing we're forgetting about cinema. Yung escapist promise niya is actually a welcome respite, di ba? To the day-to-day.
Honestly, just the air conditioning.
Totoo rin yan.
Diba?
Nakakantok
or the cruising.
You mentioned yung international co-funding. Do you see that in the future getting bigger within the industry? And I guess, where does that leave everyone else? Because that seems to be like a producer-heavy opportunity.
It's, okay, the international funding, how I wish there would be more options, and I'm sure there are a lot of options, but not every producer is going to have access to that. Not every project of every producer is going to have access to that. So we will have to reserve that for the special films that really cannot be produced without it. Diba?
Sali ako dyan.
Diba? No, pero I'm all for everybody learning how it's done because it's a game and there's a lot of things that you have to understand before you apply for one, let alone get the grant, no? And the stuff that you have to do after you get the grant, diba? To justify all the spending. That's all that helps professionalize, I think, how we do things and make it more globally, diba, competitive. But it's not going to be a solution to the industry.
Yeah.
It's just going to help one or two milestone projects that are great, and
Ganda ng term,
thankfully,
milestone project.
diba? Yung parang,
But they are
It's not for all.
hindi siya
Yeah,
magagawa
yeah.
kung walang funding na to. Fantastic. But
Yeah.
it's not going to solve the rest of our problems.
Also, kasi yung mga films that do have international co-production or seek it out, they also can wait. There are some stories that can't. There are some stories that have to be told now. They can't be told in 5 years or 10
Yeah,
years,
yeah.
which is sometimes how long those films actually take. And so I do think there will always be a ceiling for that, not necessarily because of opportunity, but because the kinds of stories that we want to tell demand different kind of resources. They're like different flowers, diba? You can't demand a rose to be a lily and the thing like that. Yeah.
I don't want to end without talking about the audience, which is, I think, the most important part. And from a film criticism perspective, it has become also democratized. So how do you feel that is evolving the audience? Na everyone can now have a letterbox account or share online they're put on their film crit hat and then talk about movies.
Ako, I don't mind it as much. I remember, okay naman pag-usapan ka to. Anyway, okay, sige. A lot of people, when I do talks about film criticism, the first thing that they ask me, tinanong to sa akin sa UP, tinanong to sa akin sa Binisaya, is now, what do I think about Golden Reviews? I'm validating your Golden Reviews. Anyway, but for me, do I think that Golden Reviews is a film critic, for example? And to me, that's a very uninteresting question. Kasi that's not, diba, ang answer lang doon is yes, I think he's a film, they're a film critic, or no, I think they're a film critic. That's not an interesting question. For me, the more interesting question is, why is Golden Reviews or Maganda Ba popular as a film criticism site, right? And the answer is because they write in a language that is accessible to
Entertaining
people.
talaga.
Yeah, diba? It's very honest, it's very raw, and at the same time, it communicates immediately their perspective, diba? It might not always, in the definitions of Pauline Kael, diba, help us see the work differently or help us find the things in the work, but it does function as a very quick, apt, immediate consumer guide, which is what a lot of people look at, diba? But I do think that criticism, I do think that honestly posts from stars, matter a lot, especially when it comes to talking about the film. But I remember that, for example, if you Google your favorite film, let's just say Zombadings, right? The first thing you encounter isn't the film, it's the criticism. It's all of the things that other people wrote about it. It's what Philbert D wrote about it, or Leigh Baltar, or Og's Cruz, or whatever, right? And that's what drives people to search for these things, diba? The Thing, for example, ni John Carpenter, wasn't regarded as a masterpiece before. It was only through critical reappraisal 20 years after it was released that it was parang hugged by the audience. And for me, that's really, at least my goal is really to like help people find the films that they're looking for, And my opinion of films change constantly. I used to hate, I forgot, what did I used to hate? Basta meron ako super hate before, tapos pinanood ko siya, tapos sobrang
Ganda
gusto ko na
pala.
siya. And it was just speaking to me at a very different time. I'm sure for all of us, we also feel that way. Some projects might not feel special while we're making it. And then as soon as it's hugged by the audience, or maybe even rejected by the audience, we realize how special it is. And so I think the value of the criticism is in helping people from the future and in the present find the work, but it also captures the specific moment in time when it was created, diba? At least that's what I try to
Does it
look for.
translate to actual audiences watching or rejecting a film?
I don't always know. I think, well, ang answer ko is, I've been lucky enough to have been writing in general for publications. I've never had to worry about if my writing will find an audience. And I think that's where publications actually are very interesting kasi nga, in other countries, there are no more publications publishing reviews or anything. Puro PR na lang. And I was surprised to learn about that when I went to another country earlier this year. But here, there's so much writing. I mean, diba? You can find 20 reviews of Querido by sino yun? Mystica, diba? And the like, diba? Whether on Letterboxd or on a blog or whatever. And that's a gift that people are watching and they're writing about it. They're taking more time after their viewing experience to write about it. And I don't necessarily, whether that's good or bad, for me, that's irrelevant. What's relevant is that there are people willing to chronicle our times. And you don't always have that gift in other countries. Other people watch and then they just boo you, you know? Yun, and so I think that yung legacy of independent cinema is really in the fact that it can elicit these kinds of things from us, right? And at the same time, that other people from different parts of the country can review and watch it. Like, I remember going to Binisaya earlier this year and people were talking about, you know, things like Firefly or like, and The Breadwinner Is, diba? Which were from MMFF, but they're also like from, also independent producers, if you think about it, diba? And for me, that's always so fascinating. Kasi as much as people usually say na, as much as academics usually say that, sorry, academics, as much as academics usually say that film is dying, I would argue that it's because they haven't been to a theater. They usually watch stuff from screeners. Not everyone pero yeah, and when you go to a theater, ang dami talagang gusto manood ng mga bagay. Ang tanong lang is, matutulungan ba natin sila mapanood yung mga bagay na yun or not? Yun.
I think yung ambag ko lang sa question that you were asking, Jason, yung can it bring audiences to the cinema? I think it's more yung mga Rotten Tomatoes. Na pag sinabi doon na, okay yan, mataas yung score.
Okay.
That's
So
what
critical
makes them
reviews
watch.
still matter in that sense.
But then sa Rotten Tomatoes, nawawala yung nuance. Kasi all they check is
the
the percentage.
love line, yeah.
90%. So let's watch it.
Pero ako naman from as a producer, no, and a marketer na rin, ang pinakamataas ang value sa amin ngayon are, we appreciate the critics and all the big reviews, pero simple lang pag merong nag-post na nakakaiyak, alam mong merong manonood.
Okay.
Sure
And
na.
it's the friends. It's the small circles. It's not the big influence, no? It's the small circles that nakakaiyak, natawa ako, magdala ako ng tissue. Yung mga simpleng comments lang Ang ganda. Ang ganda ni Marian, ang ganda ni Alessandra, mga ganong kasing comments. Hindi, yung enough na yun. And I think that moves the
It's
needle.
the word of mouth nga
Kasi
talaga.
yung intellectual discourse siguro dun sa film community, siguro magpe-permeate para the regular viewer knows how to verbalize, kunyari, cinematography, kunyari, yung nuances ng story. Pero hindi niya ma-verbalize kasi hindi yun yung natural language niya. So, sasabihin lang niya ano yung impact sa kanya. Pero it's part of, I think, an ecosystem. Pero ultimately, what moves the needle is the ordinary person tweeting, posting about it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, critics are also ordinary people. It's just that they have these publications backing them. I remember for me, one of the most moving things that I read, for example, about Firefly, is na they were reminded about their own familial relationship when they watched it, and when they watched you. And parang, actually for me, if I was going to ask you a question, parang, does that ever affect you in terms of when your performance resonates with other people, or when a performance that you really love or a material that you really love parang doesn't always find its audience? Does it affect you sometimes?
Hindi naman. Parang, wala lang. Sorry. Yung ba yung sabihin? Like, I have this thing na gustong-gusto ko and then walang nakarelate ba?
Or like a thing that, kuwari, merong, you star in Firefly and then sobrang nag-resonate siya with so many people. Like, is that always...
Okay yun. Hindi lang ako marunong masyado magtanggap ng praises. Parang hindi ko lang alam kung paano. Kasi yung 2 burol na this year na may lumapit. Nasa burol ako. My favorite movie is My Amanda. Huh? Yung, bakit po? Parang, why not? Tapos parang, really? Tapos next burol, iba na naman. My favorite movie of yours is My Amanda. Bakit? Hindi ko talaga naiintindihan. Yung, siguro hindi lang ako marunong tumanggap, pero alam ko rin naman, marami pang iba.
Pero alam mong magic, ito, gawad purian na to para kay Alessandra. Yung magic na, kunyari, performers like Alessandra, nakikita kagad ng audience yung sarili nila sa character. At kami na nagpa-cast ng mga artista, importante yon na merong relatability yung gaganap dun sa role.
Yeah.
Kasi it works like magic. Yun yung kasunod yun yung magsisimula dun sa naiyak ako, natawa ako.
Watchable dapat yung artista.
Kasi, at saka nakaka-relate, nakuhuli mo yung nararamdaman nila.
Yes.
Eh di ilan lang yun aminin ko yun, di ilan lang artista na ganon. Maybe one aspect is popularity or at least familiarity. Hindi kailangan malaking artista pero familiar yung artista. Nakaka-relate na siya. Maybe nandun din yung image, diba? Yung personal na image, personal circumstances ng artista, maybe. Pero ultimately, maboboil down sa galing ng performance. Kasi kung magaling yung performance, hulog na eh. Hulog na kagad sila. And the few franchises we've had, diba? Kakount ko na ang walang kapares kasi parang kita-kita ang pinanggalingan niya. Nag-uugat yun dahil kumonect yung tao dun sa character. Hindi sa kwento. Yung kwento secondary. Yung character ang gusto nila makita ulit. And dahil yan sa performance ng artista na kasing galing ni Alessandra De Rossi.
Wow.
Oh,
To also underline the data here, no? Nag-release ang FDCP last year ng survey na ang preference pa rin ng Filipino na number one reason why they watch movies, artista.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
Siguro yung real winner.
That's data,
Guys, tabi muna
proven
kayo.
by data.
Kami na muna mag-uusap.
Yan yung future of the industry.